Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mendoza. Senator Pan.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the Pro Tem for for introducing this bill. Fundamentally, sometimes what happens when we look at the people who get into UC and our CSUs, and we think about the talent that took to get them there, and certainly it took talent to get them there. But we also need to think that there are a lot of people with talent who had the ability, who had the hard work, but didn't have the opportunity to get through those doors, not for any fault of their own effort or their own ability, but because they didn't have the supports and the infrastructure, right, at the school. The A through G classes weren't there. They didn't have the guidance, and I think anyone who's tried to help someone apply for higher education, for college or university, or I myself was a pre-med advisor, it's not always a straightforward process. It's not even about just that senior year. It actually starts your junior year. Did you take the SATs, and et cetera, and so forth. And actually, I reflect on this because I was just talking to some folks in my district about pipelines and how can we help out underserved students in more underserved communities and schools. And we talked a little bit about this bill, but more importantly, I talked to some of the UC folks, and they said, the average GPA is 3.9. And then they said, and I'm like, oh, 3.9, right? That's straight A's. And they said, well, actually, if you have AP courses, of course, you get that extra point. But then that belies the fact that, well, if you don't have AP courses, that's a lot harder to get that 3.9, right, than if you do have a chance to take the AP courses. Obviously, it takes some talent and work to get an AP course. But if your school doesn't even offer it, your odds of being able to pull your GPA up to that level so you can be competitive is a bit harder because you don't get that extra point advantage. Right, so if you don't, so I think it's about these missing opportunities to move people ahead. And I just reading also more recently a piece in NPR. It wasn't about college application. It was talking about English language learners and how so often when you have a challenge like being an English language learner, you may be gifted and talented, but people don't identify you as such because you're an English language problem. So this is really about trying to help level the playing field, but more importantly, this is about creating opportunity and not missing out, because it's not just the student who misses out and their family when that student doesn't have a chance to go to UC or CSU because they didn't have that chance. It's actually all of us here in this room. We miss out on that talent. We miss out on being able to have that talent grow and have the opportunity to fully develop and have the opportunities. That's why we created the UCs and the CSUs and our community colleges. And I think that's what makes this so important. So, certainly, we can think about other things, but I really think this really does get to a lot of the issues that underlie the challenges of trying to to be sure that we take maximum advantage of our human potential that we have here. With each, we have each generation that applies to our schools, we have an opportunity to maximize on that, and we don't. And this is what this bill is about. And I really want to thank you, the Pro Tem, for introducing this and being sure that we take another step in that direction for the people of California.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Pan.
Thank you. Any other comment? I, too, want to thank you for bringing the bill forward, and I think you're trying to address a situation that has been very difficult for all of our schools and our communities to address, and the inequities that have happened, it's a really tough haul. And this is, I was reminded when Senator Hancock was talking about Richmond. I got my start teaching in Richmond, at Richmond High and El Cerrito High many years ago. And now I live in a community that, it's amazing. They can go ahead and have a private foundation raise $2 million more above what the state gives them. Each kid on that campuses, the parents complain about the number of tutors they have to hire so the kids can get a head start. Well, this just doesn't happen across the board. And it gives, so that to solve this inequity is really tough. But this bill tries to do that, and I applaud you for that effort. So the bill has been, is there any other conversation or, Okay, the bill has been moved. Let's call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll give you an opportunity to close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, thank you for the opportunity to present this bill, Senate Bill 1050. Just want to quickly go of the LCFF plus schools here. You know, Madam Chair, you have 5 in your district. Mr. Block, you have 7. Ms. Hancock has 23. You know, and that includes Governor Brown's Oakland Military Academy as an LCFF plus school. Mr. Vice Chair has 8 schools. Ms. Leyva has 24 LCFF plus. Mr. Mendoza has 25. Mr. Monning has 15. Mr. Pan has 10. And Mr. Vidak has 30. So you have the most high schools, the largest concentration of poorest students among all the members in this committee. And I think that's why when we look at this process, we look how highly competitive it is to get into a CSU school, but especially a UC school. And we also look at it as it's highly subjective, this selection process, because the students who do get admitted, they've worked really hard. There's no question about it, and kudos to them. But it's not based, if you go wall to wall in a comprehensive fashion, it is not based on meritocracy. And I just want to be very clear, and these are just my own personal thoughts. You know, I don't speak on behalf of the Senate Democratic Caucus or the Senate, but the admissions process to higher education is not based on meritocracy. In fact, to me, it's a facade, because if you don't have everyone who has access through A through G, then the honors classes, and you add another weight to the GPA, and then you add another weight to the AP, and you get extra points weighted system, then the results are predictable. Who's going to attend higher education and who's not, especially in a highly competitive system like the University of California. I think it was Angelica Reyes who just mentioned, perhaps it's her, and I'll attribute to her, that the system is broken. The system is broken, and the system is rigged today against students at the lowest economic strata. And that's across the board. That's poor Asian Americans, that's poor whites, that's poor Latinos, that's poor African Americans, that's poor other folks, immigrants. And it's rigged against you, because if you don't have that sophisticated lab science course, and let's say you do meet the A through G requirements, you know, by the skin of your teeth, but you don't have the ability to have access to the honors classes, and then you don't get the AP classes, and then when you apply, you're surely not going to get into UCLA. You're not going to get into UCLA, and you're not going to get into Cal. If you're lucky, you get into a UC system, but I doubt it highly, and it's through no fault of your own. So again, what we're trying to do is invest, you know, using, you know, Senator Huff's words, invest the necessary resources, and just because you do that to build out the infrastructure, and I agree, doesn't necessarily mean it'll completely connect. Everyone will be UC eligible and ready. But if we can provide the infrastructure that's needed for them and provide the flexibility for the school districts, whether it's counselors, whether it's more AP courses, whether it's more honors courses, whether they're the lab, you know, it's a high school in Calexico and they don't have the resources to have a sophisticated lab science course in comparison with Palo Alto or San Marino, then, you know, we'll provide them those resources. And then if we are successful in creating that pipeline, well, guess what? We have, you know, we're going to have a juggernaut unless you open up and expand the enrollment slots. And hence the enrollment slots with consideration for LCSF plus without taking into consideration one's color, the color of their skin, because we do live in a post-209 era. It is the law of the land. Whoever's opinion, you know, whatever opinion may exist out there, it's the law of the land. We know that. But we know that we have to really educate all of our children, poor whites, poor Asian Americans, poor Latinos, poor African Americans, because it is a startling statistic that in our K through 12 California, 59% of our kids come from low-income backgrounds. In short, they're poor. And the odds are stacked up against them. So if we can give them a real opportunity to succeed, and also understanding that if we do this and we do this well, the vast majority of kids are still not going to UC. They're still not going to go to CSU. Hopefully they'll get into a good community college, and the $900 million that we have provided over the course of 3 years for career technical education, especially hopefully in the clean energy space, where we seem to be going economically, will really give young men and women a real opportunity to succeed. And that, like Mr. Pan says, when all of these kids succeed, what's the rural areas in Central Valley or the Imperial Valley or urban areas like Oakland and LA, we just succeed, and we're a better state as a whole. So with that, Madam Chair, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you very much. The bill has been moved. Let's call the roll.
This is item number 1, SB 1050. The motion is due pass as amended to appropriations. Lou? Lou, aye. Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Huff? Leyva? Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Pan? Pan, aye. Vidak? Vidak, aye. That's 8.
8-0, the bill is out. Members, let's just do some administration here. Item 13 on your agenda has been pulled by the author, and we have one item for consent, and I entertain a motion. Okay, so move. Okay, so let's call the roll on consent as amended.
Lou?
Aye.
Lou, aye. Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Huff? Huff, aye. Leyva? Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Pan? Pan, aye. Vidak? Vidak, aye. 9-0.
9-0, the consent has been approved. Okay, we have Senator Hill, item 5, SB 1192, and then followed by item 9, Senator Wolk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, SB 1192 is the sunset bill for the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education. The bill is necessary to make changes to the Private Post-Secondary Education Act in order to ensure continued oversight of private post-secondary institutions that supports quality, innovative programs which are approved in a timely manner, while also making sure a robust government structure prevents predatory practices and promotes student success. SB 1192 ensures that certification and registration necessary for a student to engage in a particular profession are reflected in the BPPE's approval of educational programs. The bill also provides BPPE the authority to give extensions on the timeline for unaccredited degree-granting institutions to become accredited according to certain evidence. SB 1192 establishes an Office of Student Assistance and Relief to serve as a primary point of contact to address the needs of private post-secondary education students, and requires the office to establish and maintain a website to provide information to students about their rights and protections available to them, as well as information about free services available to students provided by local nonprofit community service organizations. The bill also provides recourse through the Student Tuition Recovery Fund to students impacted by the abrupt closure of Corinthian Colleges Incorporated last year. Through SB 1192, we established legislative intent to require a private post-secondary education institution that does not maintain a physical presence in this state, but offers distance education in California to California students, to file a surety bond for the benefit of students suffering income and economic loss. These schools would also have to register with BPPE. The bill also authorizes Bureau staff to issue a citation with a fine not to exceed $5,000 before leaving an institution when non-minor violations of the Act are detected during an inspection, and increases the penalty for operating an institution without BPPE approval from $50,000 to $100,000. SB 1192 also requires the Director of DCA to appoint an enforcement monitor with a specific concentration on the adequacy of Bureau compliance inspections, handling and processing of student complaints, and timely application of sanctions or discipline imposed on institutions and persons in order to protect the public. These monitors have been extremely effective in ensuring that the legislature has valid information necessary to make any statutory improvements. Enforcement by the Bureau and taking swift action has been a challenge, and I believe that a monitor is an effective way to determine where problems may lie and how we can solve those to ensure students are protected. The focus of any conversation about the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education and ACT should be about finding balance between a thoughtful regulatory structure that allows good schools to thrive while at the same time establishing meaningful opportunities for students. We must continue to ensure that the Californians working to better their lives through education and skills-based training have some confidence in the quality of education and training they receive. It is also important for us to find ways to increase accountability for California students, as well as for the significant amount of public and private resources spent on educational and training endeavors. We do have some witnesses in support, Madam Chair. Thank you.
In support of the bill, please.
Madam Chair, members, Ed Howard, Senior Counsel with the Center for Public Interest Law and Children's Advocacy Institute, appearing on behalf of those organizations as well as the Veterans Legal Clinic at the University of San Diego School of Law and the coalition of supporters reflected in your analysis, which is an excellent analysis, by the way. Madam Chair, regulating the for-profit education business sector is one of the more daunting challenges faced by the state of California for 3 reasons. The first is that very few state regulatory agencies seek to exercise oversight over such large, publicly traded, multi-billion-dollar national corporations. It's a big job. The second reason is that this is simply one of the more troubled private sectors in the country, with, according to the New York Times, 37 state attorneys general banding together to pool their resources to investigate well over 100 schools and institutions on, and they're not just investigating them for minor things. These are things like misrepresentation, deception, and fraud. And third, the third reason why this is such a difficult challenge is because of who these students are. They are disproportionately students of color, foster children or former foster children, veterans, immigrants, and by definition, uneducated. An example of that and why some of the reforms of this terrific bill are needed is ProPublica recently released the documents obtained by the Attorney General in her lawsuit against Corinthian. And one of those documents, which I didn't bring copies of, but is a PowerPoint presentation given to Corinthian's recruiters. And if you can see it here, this says, the summary of insights about our prospects. And you'll see who they are. Low self-esteem, stuck, unable to see and plan well for the future. Few people in their lives who care about them. These are the people the Bureau needs to protect. So it's a very, very big job. And California is disproportionately affected when the regulatory efforts of the Bureau fail. A significant majority of the students afflicted by the closure of Corinthian campuses were California students. Of the 56 Maranello campuses that closed abruptly earlier this year when the Department of Education terminated federal financial aid on the basis of allegations of job placement inflation, 39 of those campuses are in California. One very major publicly traded corporation with 13 campuses in California just settled with the California Attorney General and the Department of Education for $99.5 million. Against that backdrop, this is a very needed bill. And 3 of the reforms in this bill are particularly noteworthy. The first is the Office of Student Protection. As your terrific analysis points out, quote, the background paper notes that the Bureau has focused significant efforts to provide outreach to schools, but the Bureau does not focus similar efforts on student outreach to inform students about the Bureau's work and available resources for students. Likewise, the analysis correctly identifies the truly troubling backlog of over 1,000 student complaints that currently exists. That's a terrific idea, based on outreaching to these particular kinds of students who need that kind of outreach perhaps more than many other kinds of students. The second, and for the same reason, the enforcement monitors are a terrific idea. The task as laid out in the plain language of the bill is that it will focus the enforcement monitor on the processing of student complaints in part. That's a terrific idea. And finally, just a hallmark, one other important feature of the bill makes sure that if an institution offers certification and registration and makes a representation that you'll be able to get certified for a particular kind of job or be able to be registered for a particular kind of job, that in fact, that's true. Those are three common sense reforms we enthusiastically urge and I vote for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In support of the bill? Is there any other public comment in support of the bill?
Yes, this is Tia Nguyen. I'm here with Public Advocates, and we are here in support of this bill.
Thank you. Any others in opposition to the bill?
Madam Chair, Senators, Fred Jones on behalf of the Professional Beauty Federation of California, and the author has committed to working with us, so I want to preface my comments on that and hope that that will bear fruit. The question isn't whether the state has a role in oversight of these schools. They do, they should. The question we have is, who could do an effective job? At least for purposes of the beauty industry and beauty schools, we believe that the State Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, which has requested sole oversight, be that agency. Our beauty school students are similar to what Mr. Howard described. They're often the forgotten, the left out, the kids that didn't have A through G, the kids that have never had their parents or family go to four-year universities. But also, some of them are college grads that are looking for a second career. I mean, we have 3 times as many people enrolling in our community colleges than matriculating up to our four-year colleges because there's a lot of folks with four-year degrees that are unmarketable. So trade schools are important and beauty schools are important as well. Not a single beauty student knows what the BPPE is. If they've been defrauded by one of their schools, and we do have some bad beauty schools, they will call the State Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, and the State Board can simply refer them to another DCA agency. So there's a bureaucratic loop here that is not well serving the students that are being defrauded by bad schools. Furthermore, our State Board of Barbering and Cosmetology already regulates the facilities, the equipment, the textbooks, the instructors. They are annually inspecting these schools, and they provide the licensing exam. We don't think it's a stretch, therefore, to simply ask them to also monitor student relations and protecting students. And by the way, they do all of that without receiving a nickel from beauty colleges. Whereas most of my schools, in fact, almost without exception, are single ma and pa schools, second, third generation family. And yet many of them are paying $25,000 a year to the BPPE for the license to have their business. The BPPE's budget has tripled since 2010. And yet all of the problems that have long existed with this agency, dating back to 1990 when they were a council, remain. That's why this bill creates 2 new layers of bureaucracy to monitor this agency. We don't think that's necessarily the right way to go. So for beauty colleges, we would say transfer this authority over to the State Board, and let's put out of business the schools that are causing the reputation of our good schools to go down. Short of that, we would like to see the fee structure that the BPPE is charging these small schools adjusted. Some of these huge multinational corporations are paying less than my third generation small schools. So we hope to work with the author, at least in those regards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other opposition? Any comments or questions from members? Senator Block.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank, Madam Chair, I'd like to thank the author. This is an important bill, a bill that fills in a lot of gaps currently in the law. I don't really understand the comments were purportedly in opposition. It doesn't really sound like they're opposed to this bill. It sounds like comments that might be more well suited to a B&P hearing. this bill will protect beauty college students as well as students in any of the private for-profit schools. So for the students of the Last Witness, as well as the students of all other private for-profit schools, I will support this bill. I'll move the bill now and thank the author again for authoring it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members? None. Okay. I know this has been this agency has been really wrought since its beginning. The state has always struggled about oversight of these private post-secondary institutions, private for-profit institutions, and it's been a real struggle. So I see this as a kind of a work in progress. This doesn't solve all the problems, but we did have a hearing, and the bill reflects the information, results, and the recommendations of the hearing, and in that respect, I can support the bill. But it is a work in progress, and it is a huge job. We don't have all the answers. I don't know how other states do it, and this is a state that has always been kind of hands-off on for these private for-profits, and this is an attempt to try to put some parameters around and protect student interests, et cetera. So with that, the bill has been moved. Is there any, none others? Okay. Would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your leadership at the hearing the joint hearing that we had, and for the analysis that really reflects the comments and the concerns that came out of that hearing. I did want to respond and thank you, Senator Block, for your comments. And yeah, I think you really saw the challenge. The BBC, or the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, they're experts in curriculum and standards for training future cosmetologists, estheticians, and nail technicians, and the beauty industry. But the board has no experience to really uphold student protections and disclosures and fair business practices, and that's what this is what the board does. The BPPC does. The two entities have a formal memorandum of understanding, and I think the fee concern that was raised is valid, and we need to work to make sure there's equity in that. But one of the concerns with moving this, and every year it seems to come up, the BBC is comprised of a majority of public members in statute, and but with current vacancies, the industry, a majority of industry representatives, including school owners, are a majority of that board today. So the school owners are on the board. The board has had school owner representatives for many years, including every year that the BBC and Mr. Jones Group have requested for the board to have sole oversight of those schools. So I'm sympathetic with the dual oversight and unnecessary regulatory burdens, but I do think that in order to protect those students, and especially in light of the protections that are necessary and the business practices that we want to maintain, that we would certainly try to lessen the burden, but maintain where we're going in the future, and that the two agencies will oversee those schools. So I respectfully ask for an aye vote, members. Thank you for the discussion, and thank you to Senator Wolk for her consideration earlier.
Thank you. The bill has been moved. Let's call the roll.
This is item number 5, SB 1192. The motion is due pass to appropriations. Lou?
Aye.
Lou, aye. Block?
Aye.
Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Huff? Huff, aye. Leyva? Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Pan? Pan, aye. Vidak? Vidak, aye. That's 9-0.
9-0, the bill
Madam
is
Chair.
out.
Thank you, Member.
Thank you. Senator Wolk, you have item 9, SB 1343. Thank you.